Hi there. I wanted to share a technique using the mixer brush tool I learned about yesterday. Um, this guy right here, Matthias, I believe is how you say his name. Sorry if I butchered that dude. He did this painting in about 30 minutes, and while I know he's not exactly happy with it, I think it's a fairly cool painting, really interesting. But the most interesting thing to me is how he did these trees in about 30 minutes using this technique. So I played around with it, and I figured out how to use it, and I did this in maybe 10, 15 minutes, sort of like a bloodstream thing. I don't know. Just having a little bit of fun with it. Anyways, you could do some of the stuff with like the clone stamp and whatnot, but the way with the mixer brush tool is a little bit more intuitive. So let me just jump in right here. To get to the mixer brush tool, it's right under the brush drop down menu. So if you have the brush active, you just hold on that and go down to the mixer brush tool. The key for this though is up in here in these settings, is you want it to have an like dry heavy load. I think that's the one that works the best. I haven't really tried the other ones. These other ones in here mix the paints sort of like a blending sort of thing. That's not what you want. You want the dry heavy load. And so what you're going to do is, like you would with a normal paintbrush, how you could sample colors and stuff, what you want to do is using this, make sure it encompasses the whole thing, sample what you want to use it on. And so usually I would make sure it's on its own separate layer, just create a new layer. And now using that, you can see what it does. This is with no scattering and just normal spacing. What it does is just stamps it. And so you can see very easily how you could get some like sort of tubing or something like that. You know, and depending on which direction you go with it, the lighting will change on it based on whatever you've made. So this little sphere will give you this sort of thing, which I think is really, really cool. There's a lot of different things you could use it for, a lot of techniques. You might be able to use it for like tree branches or something, you know, and so up in your settings, you can change a lot of stuff. So the shape dynamics, you can make it smaller with less pressure, and you'll see how that works. You know, so you could even like have it coming at you, which I think is really cool. And you can, I don't know if you can tell, but there's the spacing is making it so it's almost a little sort of ribbed. So you could lower that spacing if you want. It's at 5% now. It might not be able to get rid of it entirely, but it will run just a little bit slower, but it's actually pretty responsive still. So using this, you can see how there's quite a few applications you could use it for. You know, this is just one thing in this little sphere, but let me go to this like skin ball that I made. And let's say you wanted to like put some sores on it or something like that, you know. So I made this one little sore on its own little layer. Made sure I soften the edges so it blends nicely. So what I'm going to do is mixer brush tool again. Just going to sample that, create a new layer, and see what it's going to do. It's going to do what it did with the other thing. You don't want that. What we're going to do instead is turn on the scattering a little bit. We want the count fairly low, but and I'll up the spacing so it's not too crazy, and we'll see if this works for us. Not so great. Let's up the spacing a little bit more and just add a bit more scattering to it. And so now you can see, I'm just going to clip this real quick so it stays inside. Whoops. There we go. And so you can sort of do that. Add these little sores all over this thing. And it's depending on, it doesn't rotate or change, so whatever image you sample, it's going to maintain that direction and sizing. So if you want it to rotate, you're going to have to create a new one to do it. But you can see how this works, and it's kind of gross looking, really. You can, the pen pressure will vary the opacity as well, so you can kind of layer things if you want to. But then you can come back in here with like Dodge or something like that and lighten these ones up so the lighting matches, and then go back to like say the normal brush tool and, you know, glaze over these ones so they fit in just a little bit better or something like that. You know, so fairly quickly you see you don't have to really paint all these things. I mean, it still needs some work, but it's a fairly nice base, you know, to get something gross like that, and all because you painted just this one little thing and then you can sample it, which is really, really neat. So let's move on, and I got this little like hose link thing. So you see before I had that sort of a tubing look, and so let me go back to the mixer brush tool. I'm gonna sample this. This one's gonna take a little trial and error, so bear with me. So I just want to make sure it grabs the whole thing. Actually, sorry, create a new layer. Doesn't want to work. Hold on. Alright, actually I think it's because of the scattering. So we want to turn off the scattering, shape dynamics, equalize it, and then bring the spacing down. That's probably the problem. Whoops. Alright, well, I'm going to pause this video right now, figure out what the problem is, and then I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. Apparently I had a selection made, so that's why it wasn't working, and I just didn't see it. Anyways, so mess with the spacing. It's a pretty good result right there, actually, already, and I barely even touched it. So you can see how that works, but what you can also see is it's not going to travel, it's not going to rotate with your hose, and so it's not perfect. Although, you know, you can get kind of a neat effect like that too. One thing you got to make sure you're careful of is you can actually size it so it gets bigger, but it doesn't interpolate the pixels, and so you get these, you know, almost 8-bit looking graphics there. And if you do a little too much sizing and painting with it, it'll actually degrade the quality in general, so you're going to want to resample it at some point. But so with the hose, what you could do, whoops, let me just erase these bits. With the hose, what I did, just testing it out, I actually might up the spacing just a teeny bit more and see what happens. Nope. Put it back down. Alright, well, now I screwed it up, so there we go. Let's do that. So you get this tube and you're like, oh, well, how do I, you know, manipulate this? Now, what I would personally do, let's go to Edit, Puppet Warp, and then just put in a bunch of these little nodes, or pins. And so if you want this to flow a particular way, what you can then start doing, I mean, within reason, you can't bend it a crazy amount because then it'll get screwy looking, but just doing that, and then see, now you can, I don't know, make some crazy Doc Ock fan art or something, you know, and then once you've done that, you know, you could use like a dodge tool or any brushes on it and just, you know, add some more lighting into it so it looks a little more natural, like you didn't cheat it, you know, and that's actually a pretty cool result. I mean, you know, that's just one other thing you can do with it. I just made this really quick, not to use as a whole because it looks terrible, but if you can use different brushes. I was just using the round brush, and you can soften it and stuff like that. That's great for sampling like an entire thing, but if you just want to sample bits of it, come down here and I'm going to go to, I think this leaf brush of sorts. And so what I'm going to do is use this just to sample part of this foliage, right? Just sample part of it. And this will only stamp parts of it, right? And now look what you get. You basically now have a brush with color information. You know, and so because this brush is randomized, it's going to randomize the results just a little bit. And so it's not a uniform stamp like it would otherwise look like, which is really nice, you know. And so then if you wanted to sample another part of it, just go back down there. What you can also do too is you can have it sample all layers, you can see up here, but what you're going to end up getting is stuff in the background that you don't want. So if you want the transparency in there, just go back to the layer and, you know, get some maybe darker areas in there. And, you know, start painting again. You know, and really kind of a cool way to get some nice painterly foliage. You know, some trees or bushes or anything like that. What you can also do is use actual pixel images, which I think is where it might become really powerful, especially if you're doing any matte painting or sort of like photo finish concept work. So let me just sample part of this tree. I'll sample somewhere in the mid-range right here. Just create a new layer, right? Actually, what I'm going to do as well is put on the pressure sensitivity in this, which will help. You know, so you can sort of punch this in there like that. You get some pretty good results. And then let me go back and sample one of these top bits, see what happens there. You know, so you can sort of get some lighting on it and stuff like that. It's not perfect, you know, but you can get some pretty cool results with it. You know, and you can size it within reason a little bit back and forth to get some variation. And then what's also really cool is you can continually sample on stuff you've already done. You know, so it's eventually going to degrade the quality where it's not going to look so good. But I think you can get an idea for the possibilities here. It's sort of like Painter has an image hose feature, and there's some plugins for Photoshop. I think they can do it, but I haven't really tried them. But it lets the image hose feature in Painter lets you plug in a bunch of different little images and it'll like randomize between them like a brush would, which is really great. But if you want something that's kind of close to that you can do in Photoshop, this is a fairly reasonable way to go about it. So if you want to get some foliage in there, you're doing a painting or whatever, this is garbage looking right here, to be honest. But you get the idea, and then you can paint on top of it. Use your dodge and burn it a little bit to get some more lighting in there. I don't know, do whatever you want. But this is just rudimentary stuff. I just learned it. I haven't really utilized it for anything yet, but I think you get the idea of the things that you could do with it. And you could do like, I did this. You could also probably do a zipper with it, which would be really cool. So you take a little bit of time just to complete one little aspect of something. You could end up with some really cool stuff. Like, so let me go and let me grab that round brush again. Whoops. And so it's the quality of what you're doing is dependent on the size of the initial thing you're doing. So in fact, let me just size this up. It's going to look terrible though, so let me just sharpen it. Just do a couple other things so it doesn't look so terrible. I just don't feel like repainting it, to be honest. Alright, whatever, we'll just deal with that. What I'm going to do is just erase a little bit of it as well so those edges aren't quite as soft. That bit in the middle is kind of tilted, but I really don't care. Anyways, what I'm going to do now is go back to the mixer brush tool, grab this, make a new layer, probably adjust the spacing again, a little bit less. And you could do some sort of cool building even, or something like that. So like I said, it's dependent on the quality of the initial thing that you're using, whether you paint it or you sample a photo or something like that, So imagine what you could do with like a repeating texture of like a piece of a building or something like that, or just some sort of industrial looking thing, with a bunch of this stuff going on. And there's a lot of possibilities for it. A lot of things that not only speed up your workflow for speed paintings, but even production paintings or anything that you're doing for yourself, even matte paintings. Just it's kind of a neat technique to be able to utilize to not only get stuff done faster, but to add a little bit more realism to it, rather than if you're doing like a chain or something, to have it all, look uniform or look too concept arty, to add a little bit more realism to it with the actual pixel information. Anyways, I hope that was useful, and I hope I didn't bumble around too much, but hopefully it was clear enough what you need to do. You can mess around with the other settings in here, but like I said, the dry heavy load, 0% wetness, 100% load, the flow turned on, that should work for you. And if you're sampling things, but keep in mind as well, if you're going to sample something, like if you use this soft brush, like I said, you can use any brush you want depending on what you want to get out of it. It's not always going to look great, but you can sample just a portion of something as well. See how that works? So it kind of fades the backside of it, so you can get some cool effects like that. So I leave it up to you to figure out what you can do with it. Good luck, and catch you later.